I said very candidly that the right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America. That's right. He's more interested in giving billions of dollars to other nations, while farmers in urban cities around this country are literally being destabilized. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's through executive order, or whether it's through the brave women and men who are serving as rapid responders, we literally have people who are volunteering in this city, on the southwest side, the northwest side, all over this city, to make sure that we're protecting children from being separated from their families. And we're talking about volunteers who are literally putting themselves at risk of being shot and killed by the federal government. And so whether it's the legal system, whether it's our continuous struggle for liberation through organizing, and whether it's through executive action, or whether it's through law, it would be nice if we actually had lawmakers in Washington that would actually hold this president accountable. And if they won't do it, then the city of Chicago will, using every single tool that's available to us.
Hanlon's razor tells us we should never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. And I am reminded of that axiom more and more as I listen to the increasingly unhinged words of Brandon Johnson, the Democrat mayor of Chicago, who appears to be a genuinely and profoundly stupid man. Now, we have no shortage of evidence that leads us in the direction of that particular conclusion, but I want to give a special mention to this quote that he vomited out on Monday of this week, and I have no idea what point he was attempting to make here, but it seems pretty clear that he didn't fully think through the implications of what he was about to say before he up and said it. Quote, "I say very candidly that the right wing in this country want a rematch of the Civil War. I want to set that right now because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and the people across America," end quote. Dude, do you realize you're a black man from Illinois who just declared yourself a Confederate? Because let's just take a moment to extrapolate your fun little Civil War metaphor to its logical conclusion, shall we? You, Mayor Brandon Johnson, and your corpulent buffoon of a wingman, Governor J.B. Pritzker, are engaged in a full-fledged effort to interdict and interfere with federal personnel who are engaged in the discharge of their lawful duties. So, if you're looking for a Civil War or a post-Civil War analogy, then you are doing the exact self-same thing that the original Ku Klux Klan was doing during the early Reconstruction period. In other words, if you're going to start throwing around Civil War metaphors, there is no version of that metaphor where you guys aren't the Confederate slaveholders. You want the federal troops to leave so you can be left in peace to continue your criminal enterprise in defiance of the president and the Congress. And since you're the mayor of the largest city in a state that sacrificed 34,000 of its sons between 1861 and 1865 on the altar of freedom for black Americans held in a condition of involuntary servitude, I wonder how deeply you thought about this metaphor before you decided to say it out loud in public. In fact, I wonder how deeply you're capable of thinking about anything. It's Wednesday, the 8th of October. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we fervently hope Mayor Johnson shows up for his next press conference, dressed like Nathan Bedford Forrest. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's talk about the life trajectory that led Brandon Johnson to his current lofty station, because it is a great case study, I think, in the roadmap by which unexceptional, untalented, really quite stupid men, if they have the correct opinions and the right intersectional advantages, can ascend to the highest echelons of political power without ever having done anything that could be described as useful. One might call it the Barack Obama plan. Now, Brandon Johnson is 49 years old. He has never spent one day of his life working outside of academia or government, which is an increasingly common theme for today's Democrats. There was only about a 4-year, maybe 3.5-year period where he could even be described as having something resembling a real job in the real world. He graduates from Elgin High School in 1994. It takes him 10 full years, I'm not making this up, to earn a bachelor's degree in something called youth development from Aurora University. He then stays at Aurora University for a further 3 years to earn a master's degree in teaching. So 13 years as a full-time student from age 18 to age 31 just to earn sufficient qualifications to become a social studies teacher at a public elementary school, Jenner Academy Elementary, to be particular, a post that he held from 2007 to 2010. Jenner Academy Elementary doesn't exist anymore, by the way. It was shut down by the city and merged with another school just a few years ago because it was plagued by constant gang violence, and 2/3 of the students couldn't pass the state-administered standardized tests in math or reading or science. And with teachers as stupid as Brandon Johnson, it's not difficult to see how that happened. Johnson then becomes a teacher at a high school called George Westinghouse College Prep, but he holds that position for less than 1 year, and here ends the portion of his life where he can be described, even charitably, as having a real job in the real world, because what does he then become? Drum roll, please. Here is where the Obama plan kicks into high gear. He becomes a full-time community organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union in 2011. Why does a teachers union need community organizers? What does a community organizer actually do all day? Unclear. Barack Obama has written half a dozen autobiographies, and we are still no closer to understanding what a community organizer does all day, except whatever the Democrat Party needs them to do. And that actually was a big part of Brandon Johnson's job, such as it was. He was on the payroll of a public teachers union, but for most of the years between 2011 and 2018, he was working as a Democrat campaign operative for various candidates for mayor and alderman. Nope. No corruption here. I'm sure this is all perfectly on the level. Perish the thought that anyone would ever accuse a public teachers union of being a thinly veiled, barely veiled, not at all veiled adjunct organizational wing of the Democrat Party, whose main function is making sure Democrats win elections, while 2/3 of the city's school children can't read and write. It's a real American utopia, I tell you. I'm glad the Democrats are so very committed to improving the lives of our working class communities of color, aren't you? So we're up to the year 2018 now, and here's what Brandon Johnson's adult life looks like so far. 13 years as a student to earn 2 college degrees, then 3.5 years as a public school teacher who made the kids just as stupid as he is, and then 7 years of community organizing. And you know what time it is now. Yep. It's time for this unexceptional, untalented, dumb as a bag of hammers 41-year-old man to throw his hat into the ring of elected politics. So in 2018, he runs for the Democrat primary for the Cook County Board of Commissioners in the 1st District against an incumbent by the name of Richard Boykin. And though Johnson gets all of the fashionable endorsements, all the best labor unions and progressive advocacy groups, hell, he even gets the endorsement of the president of the Board of Commissioners, but the election is still a closely run thing in the actual event. Johnson winds up defeating Boykin by only 0.8 of a percentage point, a total of a mere 437 votes. And you shut up right now, you filthy election denier. Of course there wasn't any ballot stuffing going on here. What does this look like, frickin' Chicago? Oh wait, never mind. Anyway, as you might expect, the Democrat primary is the real general election as Cook County Commissioner races go. The Republicans didn't even bother nominating anybody to run against Brandon Johnson after he won the primary because why bother? So, despite never having done a single useful thing in his entire natural-born life, Brandon Johnson is duly sworn into his first elected office as a Cook County Commissioner on the 3rd of December, 2018. Now, County Commissioner isn't supposed to be an actual full-time job, so our man Brandon continues his so-called work as a community organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union, which largely amounts to agitating for a teacher's strike in the year 2019. He had also agitated for a teacher's strike back in 2012, so that seems to be a particular specialty of his, demanding increased pay and benefits for the teachers in one of the country's lowest achieving school districts. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And in his role as a Cook County Commissioner, his most glorious achievement was being the chief sponsor of something called the Just Housing Ordinance, which amended the county's existing housing ordinance by prohibiting potential landlords or property owners from asking about or considering prospective tenants or homebuyers' criminal histories. You know, because nothing says social justice like making a criminal out of a property owner if he or she refuses to rent to a child rapist or an armed robber or a drug dealer. Our man Brandon really loves making the world a better place. And then came the year 2020 and the George Floyd Summer of Love, and you bet your sweet ass Brandon Johnson wasn't going to pass up that chance to make some political hay for himself. He authored something called the Justice for Black Lives resolution that was adopted by the Cook County Commission in July of 2020. This was a resolution that called for reallocating funding from policing and incarceration to public services not administered by law enforcement that promotes community health and safety equitably. To put it another way, yeah, he was doing the fashionable 2020 thing by calling for replacing police officers with rapid response social workers and clearing out all the prisons and no cash bail, the whole 9 yards, the time-honored formula whereby we turn peaceful, well-ordered American cities into dystopian hellscapes of despair and human suffering. He even accidentally said the quiet part out loud during that summer of 2020 when he said in an interview that he supported the idea of defunding the police and praised it as something that he called a real political goal. He would later walk back his embrace of the phrase defund the police, especially making an effort to disassociate himself from it during his 2023 mayoral campaign, in which, of course, as we know, he was then duly installed as the mayor of Chicago, despite being an unaccomplished, dim-witted fool with an IQ probably around 78, because look, guys, he's a photogenic black man. What the hell else do you want? Who cares if he is so stupid he accidentally makes Civil War analogies where he is a Confederate general and the leader of the KKK? Who cares if he is so stupefyingly ignorant about how the American system of government works that he actually thinks he can issue an executive order saying federal immigration authorities just aren't allowed to enter certain parts of the city? In fact, if we had a functioning press in this country, which we do not, but if we did, and a reporter asked Brandon Johnson to explain how his little executive order where he tried to establish something called ice-free zones comports with the supremacy clause in Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, I submit that there is a significantly non-zero chance he would reply by saying, "Well, I'm opposed to the white supremacy clause, by golly." In fact, Brandon Johnson is such an impossibly ignorant, dullard fool, he probably obviates the entire need for Hanlon's razor since he is too stupid to even be capable of malice. I'm done, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Get off my lawn.